Chali. Okay, I can start now, Chali. Thank you very much. Acha, just a little bit of introduction of myself. First off, it's an amazing feeling to be joining you from thousands of miles away, literally. आप लोगों का this was early in the morning. For me, it's pretty late at night. But anyways, as I said, it's a very fantastic feeling to come back to IBA, where I also kind of graduated myself. This picture that you see kind of tells you quite a bit about what I stand for or what I've been working on for the majority of my career. So I work for Finning Canada, which is a Caterpillar dealer based in Western Canada. And the type of equipment that you see at the back is what I basically play with. I'm pretty lucky to be part of that amazing legacy of products. And that's what I've been selling most of my career. So in the session today, I'll be speaking quite a bit about Finning. So I'll talk to you about Finning in a bit. A couple of other things. So I started my career as an engineer. I graduated from Kennedy University, worked for a couple of oil and gas companies for a couple of years. But very soon I realized that I would be a good engineer, but never a great one. Whereas I was always interested in marketing. So that's where I joined IBA, finished my MBA, and then switched careers. And that's where I've been most of my career in industrial sales and marketing, and I've never looked back. Another thing that I did when I was in Canada is also did a Master's of Science in Management, and the focus was marketing. So I did get a chance to kind of go deeper into marketing, and that's where I got really interested in B2B, and that's kind of my focus area. A little funny story about how I got involved with today's session. So I met Jami, I don't know whether he mentioned, but I met him earlier on in the year in January for the first time during my last trip to Karachi. So we hit it off very well from the start, had a great conversation, agreed to collaborate on a few different projects. And as I was leaving his office, he said, "Hey, you are a B2B guy, right?" I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Hey, can you do a B2B branding speaking session?" I couldn't say no. He got me cornered, so I said, "Yeah, I'll kind of do it." I just for course outline so that I can plan my session accordingly. Now, once I got the course outline, two thoughts went to my head. The first one was, what did I get myself into? The second one was, most of the concept went way above my head. So I was doomed. But then I gave it a little bit more thought and said, I may not be the branding expert, but I know quite a few things about B2B because that's been my focus area. And during my career, I've also been involved in several neat branding projects. So I can really kind of share some of those. And that's kind of what I've done. I've kind of gone back to my career, to my own observations, and I would say opinions about branding, especially in the B2B space, and would like to share those with you. Now, one of the asks that I have for the group today is to be a little bit more interactive. So I'll kind of be asking questions. I know it's a little bit challenging being a virtual type of a setup, but it's a pretty short group, so hopefully you'll be able to engage in the conversation. That's how we all learn better. So let's get into some of the details. So just a few notes on Finning Canada, because I'll be using quite a few of examples from this organization. So Finning is a pretty big company, about 10,000 employees, spread out over 3 continents. So Finning has operations in Canada, which is I'm part of. Then they are also in South America, and then UK and Ireland. Quite a bit of a reach. In terms of its business, basically in the business of selling heavy equipment, construction equipment, and power generation equipment into mining, into power systems, and into construction. So those are the 3 big segments that this company serves. And very wide range of products. So from a small skid steer to all the way up to a big 797 truck. I'm going to show you a few pictures. They're pretty impressive of the kind of equipment that we deal with. So very diversified customer base and equipment, but very, very much into the B2B space. Okay, so the rest of the session, I've got a few things lined up. So first off, we're going to start off with a quick level set. So I'll be asking you guys a few questions. I'll be testing you and Jami as to how well he has been teaching branding. So you better be prepared. So I'll have a few questions. Jokes apart, I just want to have a quick level set just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And I'll kind of share some of my thoughts about B2B, not B2B, just the branding, some of the general concepts. And then we'll go a little bit more detailed into B2B. Jami did a really good job in explaining that at least half of this class or half of the marketing professionals end up in B2B. In fact, I'll kind of make an argument that more people end up in B2B than B2C overall, but it's a big chunk of the market out there. So I'll speak to some of the B2B branding, um, unique challenges, tips. I'll kind of get a little bit deeper into the B2B branding. And then we'll go into a couple of case studies. So I've got one case study that I picked up, which was a very interesting branding kind of a challenge that I was involved with. I lived through it. So it's a pretty interesting example of branding where it could really hurt you and how you can potentially get out of that. So I've got that example. We'll go through that. And then I've got another case study, which is a short one, but a very close partner of ours. It's a company which I've seen evolve, a brand which has really evolved very quickly in a few years, and it's a very, very powerful brand now. So I think it's a really good case study to kind of go over. So I'm going to walk you guys through that. And lastly, I've got a business scenario, and Jami has got paper copies as well, and we'll kind of do that towards the end, and that kind of brings everything home. So that's kind of the intent, that all the stuff that we're going to discuss over the next hour and a bit, we should be able to apply on this business scenario, which is again from real life. In fact, this was a challenge that our team worked at towards the end of last year, and we also have a solution. It may not be perfect, so I'm going to test you guys again and see what kind of solution you propose, and then I'm going to show you what we are trying out in that space. Any questions or comments? Everybody seems to be pretty, I don't know, not as engaged. Intent for sure. At least there are a few smiles, so that's an encouraging sign. Okay, I'll kind of keep moving. So now it's time for a little bit of an interaction, so people have to speak up. So the level set, I'm going to start off with a trivia question. How did branding start? Where does this word branding come from? What was the genesis? What was the origin? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so
Yep.
they used to brand cattle with hot metal pieces so the cattle would not get lost in certain areas on the ranches, and the farmers would know what kind of cattle belong to which farmers. So they used to brand the cattle with on hot iron plates, with hot iron plates on their backs, and that's how they started to coin the word.
Yeah, you're spot on. That's how the branding started. May not have been as, I would say, human kind of a treatment of animals, but that's how branding started, but just kind of trademarking or kind of putting those marks on the cattle, as you said. And that's what I've got this kind of a pretty interesting cartoon which I picked up on the internet. Again, I'm not suggesting that you go back to the branding roots and start kind of stamping cows or the cattle or your products, but again, that's how the branding started. That's true. So good startup. So everybody's warmed up. So let's kind of up the game a little bit. Still a pretty easy question. So what is a brand? And as I was doing a bit of a research, I must say I found a number of definitions, and most of them were pretty complicated. Again, went above my head. So I've got a pretty simplistic definition that I would share with you. But anybody from the class want to take a crack at it as to what a brand is to you? Yes, go ahead. Anyone from the front row?
So it's something that basically differentiates among the other things that exist in the market. It's like an identity of, for instance, if you're talking about a commodity, which set apart your product from the other things that are in the market.
I'm just testing my volume here. Can you guys hear me okay? Because I'm just wondering if my microphone is working fine. So, okay. Good, good. Anybody else would like to kind of add to that? Yes, go ahead, please, at the back there.
Brand is a perception, I think, that you create around your product or your offering.
For sure. Yes, I agree. And yeah, the lady on the corner, the front row, please go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I think brand is an idea that a company puts forth to its customers. It's something that, as a brand manager, I would want the customers to see. So if I'm selling an organic product, for instance, organic rice. So rice is a very common commodity that you can find in the market, and it's very common. So if I'm the brand manager of that organic rice, I would want it to be perceived in a certain way. And so I would have a target market, and my target market would see the brand as I am showing it to them. So basically, like positioning it among the customers in a certain way.
Yeah. So I fully agree. That's all the definitions that you guys kind of shared are correct. My definition is a little bit more simplistic, but again, in the same vein as what was shared in the class. So to me, a brand is a promise. That's what it is. I mean, it's a promise that the product or the service stands for. To me, that's as simple as that. And basically, your job as a brand manager is to kind of create a promise which resonates with the customers, which makes sense, which differentiates your product or service from all the competition, and your organization is able to deliver on that promise. And that's a key piece that I would like the class to kind of take away, because usually when we talk about brand and brand management, we tend to kind of limit ourselves to some of the, I would say, perfunctory concepts related to brand, which are really important, more visual, but there is a whole background piece that also needs to be taken into account. Maybe I kind of gave away the answer to the next question, so let's move forward. All right, so I did kind of find this definition of brand, not a definition, but a quote from one of the entrepreneurs. I don't know if any one of you know him, Scott Cook. He is basically the person behind a very successful internet-based company, or I would say software-based company called Intuit, which has released products like TurboTax, Mint. They are really kind of softwares that they have kind of released in very successfully in North America. So I really kind of liked what his thoughts were on a brand. That a brand is no longer what we tell the consumer it is what consumer tell each other. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't be telling the consumers. You put it well, because that's part of the brand manager's job, to create that story about their brand and tell and communicate it. But the reality is, people are not really going to buy that story as much as what other people tell them, their peers, the word of mouth, their own experience with the product. So that has really kind of take on a whole new level with the power of the social media, and we are all seeing it. I mean, that power differential has shifted in favor of the consumers and customers now, thanks to the social media. So that's something that really need to kind of take into account. So a really interesting kind of quote on branding. So why branding? Branding is very expensive. We know that. I mean, you have to spend a lot of money to create brands, support the brands, and brand managers are not cheap, right? I know brand managers are usually some of the highest paid professionals in the organizations, very visible, very prominent roles. So it's not cheap. So why invest in branding? What are the benefits? What's the rationale?
To differentiate your product from the others.
Differentiation? True. Anybody else? Yes, please go ahead. At the back.
To make your brand stand out, it's very important to to work on branding and invest on branding, because that's where it ensures that the promise being conveyed is actually being delivered by the organization, by the company itself.
True. I agree. Yes, go ahead. The person next.
The brand equity leads to the company's share value and the value of the company itself. So that's why it's important to invest in the brand to build that brand equity.
For sure, because there is a direct link. There are a lot of studies that have shown a direct link between the brand equity, and the value of the firm. Spot on. Yes, please go ahead.
I would like to add to that. Also, that adding to this point, it's like brands are the business units of an organization, and all the other departments are support units. So basically, what runs an organization is the brand itself, and that creates revenue. So branding is very important.
Yes, it is. It is. And again, all the points that you have kind of raised are valid. Again, competitive advantage, customer loyalty, brand loyalty, market share, profit, higher price premiums, continued growth, all those good reasons to invest in branding, right? I agree. So what is the scope of branding? So when I say scope, what I really kind of mean is that what does branding entail? And I did kind of allude to the answer to this question early on when we were talking about what is a brand. So what does it include? I mean, if you want to create a brand or a branding strategy, what are some of the elements? What does it include? Yes, go ahead.
So there should be a logo first, where the audience can recall the brand, and it should have certain features like having a mission statement and things that can get stuck to the customer's mind and they can recall what the brand is all about.
Yeah. So you've got messaging that you kind of predefine what message you want to lay to the market and you kind of communicate it. Correct? Anybody else? Encourage people who haven't really participated so far, please also put in your 2 cents. Yes, go ahead.
So basically, the scope of the branding is limited to the quality of the product. So the product is really great. You can really brand it to a certain extent. For example, like Apple has branded its iPhones. And if your product is mediocre, you cannot just branding is not a magic. You can just throw in your marketing tactics and create a mediocre product, and you can create a great brand out of it. So that's the scope. It's limited to the product's quality. Basically.
Yeah, so I think what you are kind of alluding to is that brand is more than, you cannot really build a brand on an inferior product. I mean, you need to have some foundation, right? You need to have a good product to be able to build the brand on. And again, if you recall, earlier on I said brand is a promise, so you don't want to have a false promise. Because if you do that, then you're going to fall on your face. There's nothing can be as damaging as trying to create a brand which does not really exist. So creating a promise or sending a promise to the customer which you don't really have a chance to be able to deliver on. So that's a no-no, right? I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. So spot on. Anybody would like to kind of build on that point? So when I kind of talk about brand and the branding strategy, so I think this picture does a good job, or it's a good metaphor to kind of understand branding overall. Because if you put a symphony or an orchestra, it is composed of a number of musicians who come together and play this music. But just think of one person or one musician being out of sync. What's going to be the result of that music or symphony or their orchestra?
Wouldn't be music.
Everything falls down, right? Yes, go ahead.
It wouldn't be music anymore, it would be noise.
Can you speak a little louder, please? I couldn't hear you.
And like the other person said, it wouldn't be music, it would be sort of a noise.
Yeah, it would be noise. Yes, that's correct. It would be noise. It won't be music anymore. And the whole purpose doesn't really matter how good the rest of the orchestra plays. If one musician falls down or one musical instrument does not work, is out of sync, the whole orchestra suffers. And that's exactly what a brand is. Yes, on the face of it, you have the visual elements, you have your advertising, your communication, but the real work is at the back end, supporting what that messaging is. And if there is a lack of alignment, just like an orchestra, if it's not playing in sync, good luck. You are better off without a brand. You're better off being a solo musician than being in an orchestra. So that's kind of the metaphor that I will use for what's the scope for branding. Any thoughts on this metaphor? Any comments?
Yeah.
Does it resonate with you? Does it make sense?
It does,
Sorry?
It's a very unrelated example, but then one in one direction, when he felt that he wasn't part of the One Direction band.
Okay. All right, I'll take that. So another quote, and this quote I kind of basically stole from our company's branding website. So I was doing a little bit of research on our branding site. just to kind of grab some, some examples for today's presentation or discussion. And they had this kind of quote at the very top, at the very front page. I will let everybody kind of read it, assuming that everybody can read it. It's not too small, but I think it does a really good job in kind of explaining as to what branding is all about. And the fact that branding is way bigger than what people typically understand. And for those of you who are wondering who Donald Cooper is, you're not the only one, because I don't know this guy either. So, but his quote was on our branding website, so he must be a marketing guru of some sort at least. But anyways, his words are true, so I think it was a good quote to kind of share with the group. Okay, so Bullseye branding tool. So has anybody heard of this tool or used it? This branding tool? I haven't. Okay, that's okay. Don't look at Jami. That's fine. There are too many tools out there, and I know his outline is very comprehensive, and he cannot really teach everything. But this is a pretty basic tool, which I find very interesting. So I'll just kind of walk you through this tool real quick, and we'll also do an exercise. So I'll kind of putting you guys to work. So this is what this tool looks like. Again, I mean, the idea of this tool is basically to kind of bring some of the basic elements of your branding strategy. So if you look at it, at the center is your brand mantra. Some people call it the brand essence. You can call it whatever, but that's basically the heart and soul of what your branding message is. So that's what your brand really kind of stands for. So is at the heart, at the epicenter. So you want to define that as to what do you stand for. And then from there, you start coming out. The first point is, what are the points of parity? This is where you are comparing yourself with your competition and saying, hey, and in the industry, what does the customer want? And then you're identifying what are the minimum kind of features and benefits, both functional and emotional, that you want to match with your competition, which are table stake. That's the point of entry. I mean, you need to have those. So what are the things that you're going to be at equal with your competition? Down below, then the next you'll see points of difference. So these are the things that you want to be different. So what are the things, again, based on what the customer needs and wants are, and what your core strengths are, the things that you can differentiate yourself from the market. So you try and can identify those. And then you kind of try to look for what are some of the substantiators, and what substantiators are, what are some of the things that we could do to really kind of bring home those differentiators and the points of parity. What are the things that we could do? It could be warranty, it could be the packaging. So what are some of the substantiators that you want to include in your offering, in your brand strategy, that really can substantiate or support your brand? And then in the outermost circle, you have got what does your brand stand for in terms of personality, character, executional properties, so your logo, your branding, markings and trademarks and all those things kind of come at the top. So interestingly enough, most of the time when we talk about branding, we are in the outermost circle. But there are so many other circles that are inside, which are quite a bit important and are a must before you can start building your outside shell. And that's the true thing that you need to understand, that you really need to kind of understand that core foundation of your brand and then kind of expand it to include the different parts of your business, product and service, and then you kind of put a cover on it and the packaging for it. So I've got an example, just going back to my own organization that I work for, Finning Cat. I try to fill it out for that. So hopefully that will kind of help you understand this concept a little bit more. So the first one, brand mantra for Finning Canada, is pretty clear: enhance customers' performance. That's what we want to do. I mean, we want to really kind of help our customers succeed. So that's kind of a brand mantra. So what are some of the points of parity? Quality, productivity, and velocity. So those are the key pieces because we understand that this is what our customers need as they start going, and this is what our competition is also offering. So we want to match that. So in terms of quality, productivity, and velocity, in terms of responsiveness and quick response to our customers, we need to be really quick. So those are some of the points of parity that we are Finning is all about. Just go ahead.
Like you said earlier, that points of parity are the differentiating factors that your product has apart from your competitors. So why do you want to match your points of parity with the competition?
So two things. First of all, let me clarify. The points of parity are the things that you are going to match with your competition. And then points of difference or the points of differentiators are the ones that you're going to differentiate on. So you have to have both. Is that clear or? Is it clear or we are still kind of confused with that? Yeah. So again, you still want to differentiate, but at the same time, you can't differentiate on everything, right? Plus, there are a few things that you need to be at least as good as your competition, and those are the things that points of parity. That's where you kind of come in. And later on, I do have a slide where I kind of compare Finning with its direct competition and talk a little bit about how I would say indifferentiated the market had become and what we are trying to kind of do to kind of differentiate ourselves. But anyways, so points of parity, quality, productivity, velocity are the point of parity. And then in terms of difference, and that was not easy because we did a lot of soul searching to kind of come up with that and a lot of market research, customer understanding, and also the understanding of our competition. But this is what we really putting our hat on in terms of differentiation. It's the expertise, the technology, and the digital piece. Because again, digital is not the way of the future. Digital is the way of the present. So we are really kind of putting a stake. In fact, there are a few years ago when we did that and we established a separate digital division, invested heavily in that organization because that's going to be critical for us to be different from our competition and help our customers succeed or perform. So that's kind of our differentiators. Building on, so in terms of substantiators, investing in products. So our products should align with our branding strategy, people, facilities, and digital. Again, all these are the key elements. Our people should be top of the notch, trained. They should know, because if you want to differentiate on expertise, we better hire experts. We better train them to be experts. We better kind of dress them like they are the experts. So we need to kind of have everything around that. People, facilities, everything has to align with that. So those are some of the substantiators. And then in terms of the characteristics, so partnership, trust, knowledgeable. So these are some of the personality characteristics that we want to have in our people, in our products, in our brand, to kind of connect with our customers and align with our branding essence. And lastly, in terms of the logo, is the same logo that you see at the top, Finning Cat. So that's going to be our key logo or kind of brand to our customers. So any questions or comments on this kind of tool or the example that I shared? So everybody's ready to do the exercise? It's going to be a race. I'm going to test you guys. Okay, so here's the exercise. So pick up a partner. And if you guys, I see that people are sitting in threes. So 3 is okay too, but ideally I would like to have pairs of 2 if possible. Otherwise 3 people can work together. You need to populate the template. Be creative. Got 5 minutes. Go ahead. Okay, wait. I didn't even tell you what to populate this template on, and nobody even asked me. I was just testing you guys. So anyways, I think it would be neat to kind of build it on IBA because it's kind of relevant to everybody. Everybody is part of IBA, so it should be very easy for us to use this as an example and populate the template. But I'm going to make it a little bit difficult for you. So nobody can use this tagline, leadership and ideas for tomorrow. Forget it. It does not exist. Just think about IBA, what you know about IBA, what you think about IBA, and then try and kind of build this template. You've got 4 minutes, and then we'll have a quick debrief and talk about how you filled it. Go ahead. People should be taking notes, I would expect. Take some notes so that you can share with me and the rest of the class. Okay, so time's up.
We need 5 more minutes.
Two more.
Come on. No, let's just kind of come back. Whatever you guys have got, we've got quite a few other things to cover, so we'll have to cut it short. I'll have everybody come back. And then who's going to be the first volunteer to share what they got, just at a high level? Okay, so can I have everybody's attention? The time is up. Pen down, chins up, face towards me. That's good. Okay, who's going to be the first one? Yes, go ahead.
So the brand mantra for IBA would be developing outstanding business leaders.
Okay, good, good.
Sibat, the points of parity would be infrastructure, accreditation, and different programs that it offers.
Okay. You
And
have to be.
the
Go ahead.
points of difference would be the faculty at IBA, the curriculum, and discipline, and the alumni network.
Good. Good. Pretty good. So,
Substantiators में we just thought about the exchange programs at IBA, semester exchange programs that it offers, recruitment drives, and executional properties and visual identity में the IBA logo,
okay.
and
Any changes to the logo, or you're good with the current logo as part of your branding?
In 4 minutes,
Bullseye. Do you,
come up with a new logo. We'll stick with this logo because in 4 minutes we could not come up with a new one. Or else we would
at least you can suggest. You can change a logo or maybe
instead
make
of
it a
the
little bit different.
arrows going pointing in the same direction,
in
we
the
were
same
pointing
direction.
outwards.
Good point. Good suggestion. That's good. Okay. So let's move to the next group. I'll have one more group do the.
Asuma.
So which group wanna go next?
Just returning the paper.
Front row.
What about the back row? Let's do that for a change.
Oh, yes, Anjali and Rahul. So we started with the brand mantra. So the brand mantra, we wrote top of line quality education. Then we came to the points of parity, which is the fact of the top faculty, the facilities, committed courses, the campus, the students. We then came to with the points of difference, strict controls, alignment with industry experts, international case studies, strong alumni from top organizations, and collaborative partnerships. So just like we have SEQ has approved, so that. Other than that, we came with the substantiators, the teacher, the technology, the market trends, um, values, personality, character, the ethics that we mentioned, ethics, leaders, innovators, and enablers, and the execution properties of the logo, and yes, who would suggest the logo to change.
Good job. See what you were able to do in just 5 minutes. So that's pretty impressive. So just one suggestion that when you're thinking about the brand mantra or the brand essence, you really need to kind of spend the time to get to it, and it may not be as obvious, and you rather try to be at a higher level. So it should be a more of a higher level concept than be a little bit more specific. So I think that's the only thing that I see, because you have to have a bigger purpose, right? Or a bigger promise. So that would be the only thing that you have to kind of think about as you're coming up with that, because once you have that, everything else becomes really easy as to what you need to do, right?
So you think that top
Good.
of line quality education should not be the brand mantra which we mentioned, right?
Sorry, say it again.
So top of the line quality education, which should not be the brand mantra we're mentioning, it should be more of a higher level.
Yeah, that's what I would suggest, right? So again, I just made a few notes too, but just at a high level, I was thinking brand mantra, futuristic knowledge. You talk about future, you're talking about knowledge, and that kind of makes it really aspiring and bigger.
Can we lie?
That's why what I thought.
Brand mantra? Can we lie about our brand mantra?
But again, I mean, over here, I did not put any caveats around it, right? So it was your idea. You can bring, come up with anything that you want. But anyways, that was some of my thoughts. And so let's kind of keep moving forward because we've got quite a few things to cover. I hope that exercise was good. And the people who are smiling that they did not get to present or put forward there, I'm watching you. So next exercise, you will be the one. Okay, so now that we have got a level set, let's get into the B2B branding. So the first question that I have is branding even relevant to B2B?
Yes.
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 That's a pretty rhetorical question. Otherwise, I shouldn't have been in this room to begin with. Again, there has been a lot of conversation, and honestly, a lot of companies, even today, think that branding does not make sense when it comes to B2B. Can you think of why?
Because a lot of people, when you think about brands, they think about products or different like shampoos, for example. So you think about products, you never think about a company being branded. So it's just a perception that people have.
It is. It is. The other, yes, go ahead.
You go back to the first definition that you told us about, that it's a promise basically. So promises exist in the B2B world more than anything. So you have to live up to that promise and deliver.
Yes, that's true.
Rahat has a point.
Would you like to add on to that?
Sorry, I missed out that point. So, okay, okay, we'll keep moving forward. I'll just ignore that. So again, the key reason for that is in the B2B space, the purchasers or the customers are expected to be rational decision makers. And again, if you think about a brand is more to do with emotional benefits than physical benefits, right? Because branding really kind of adds that emotional element to your product, and that's how it becomes a brand. So again, the argument has been that in the B2B space, the customers don't really care about emotions; they are more rational decision makers. So branding does not really apply. Now that is not true. We all know that. And this is my answer. That is branding relevant to B2B? Yes, it is. And that's why I'm here. So B2B challenges. So let's just talk about a couple of B2B challenges. But before we do that, again, I would like to just kind of highlight a few other unique things about B2B, just to kind of make a case for B2B. Because again, most of the people, when I was doing marketing and branding courses at IBA, most of the people wanted to go into B2C space. And honestly, I mean, that's where most of the advanced marketing happens. B2B has been learning a lot of marketing from B2C world, and there's nothing wrong with that. But having said that, B2B is a big opportunity for marketeers because one, earlier on, I did make an argument that you've got a lot of products and services that happen in the B2B space. I was looking at some numbers. I think 70% of the products in terms of revenue are in the B2B space as compared to B2C. And then usually the stakes are higher because you're talking about bigger products, more expensive products, a lot of uncertainty. So there's a huge opportunity in the B2B space when it comes to branding because of the higher stakes. So B2B branding challenges. So what are some of the unique challenges for B2B branding? So I'll just kind of walk you through a few, which I personally believe are some of the key challenges when it comes to B2B branding. We all agree that B2B branding makes sense, right? So what are some of the challenges? So what comes to mind when you look at this picture with two punches coming at each other? B2B versus B2C. Anybody? People are thinking about UFC. Any UFC fans in the room?
When you're
Yes,
in
go ahead.
B2C marketing, you have to put in an emotional element to your advertising or branding. Whereas in the B2B, functional aspect needs to be highlighted more in your branding.
Again, my response would be it depends, yes and no. But ideally, as a brand, you would like to kind of ultimately migrate to an emotional level, right? I mean, I work for Finning, which is a B2B customer, right? But all our mobile phones are iPhones, and we know Apple is more at a emotional brand rather than a functional brand. So I would disagree with that, but at the same time, there is some truth to it too. So I would take that. Anybody else?
In B2C marketing, I think most of the time, unless you have a product that is for niche, most of the time you are talking to a big pool of customer, a big chunk of customer. In B2B, it is very specific, like you already know who you are going to talk to, what their needs are, and what you can offer to them. But in B2C, since there's this large pool of customer, you don't know each one of them personally, even in niche marketing. So you don't exactly know what they want exactly, like specifically each customer.
Yeah, for sure. Your customer base may be different. Your sales channels may be different, right? And usually in most of the B2B markets, you have got select number of customers that you're dealing with. But at the same time, there are certain B2B markets or companies which will have a very large number of customers similar to a B2C space. So again, one of the things that I wanted to highlight was that B2B has been trailing behind B2C when it comes to branding. I mean, the branding was basically has really involved in the B2C space. And what B2B has done is in most of the cases, adopted a lot of strategies from B2C, which is good, but not all the strategies apply. So that's one of the key challenge that I find, that you can't really apply all the B2C branding strategies on B2B because it's not the same. You have a lot of differences. Yes, there was a question or comment in the back.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same things about this.
Okay. So I'll just like to highlight one big thing, one major difference when it comes to B2B, which is the decision-making process. So this process is quite a bit different because it's very complex. And not to say that the B2C decision-making is not complex, but B2B decision-making is at a different level. So a couple of things. So first off, there's several stakeholders in a B2B. Usually there's a buying center, there's a purchasing committee, which involves users, influencers. It could be purchasing agent, it could be a lawyer, finance person, it could be a big team. So a B2B marketer has to really connect with all these. Your branding strategy has to kind of apply to all these people. So that kind of makes that process quite a bit complex. The purchase attributes could vary very significantly based on importance. On one hand, somebody could be looking to buy a power plant, which is a big decision, or just buying some supplies for their maybe coffee machine. So it could be very different in terms of importance, whether it's a rebuy, whether it's a modified rebuy, it's a new purchase, it's an investment, it's a capital expenditure. You've got a lot of factors that you need to consider when it comes to business purchase decisions. And lastly, even the size, the demographics of the organizations vary quite a bit. So you could have organizations with 100 people, organizations with 1,000 people. It could be different industries like training, services, various industries out there, and it kind of creates a lot of challenges. The purchasing function may be very formal in certain organizations. In certain organizations, like governmental organizations, they only buy through tendering process. Other organizations may have a different pre-qualification criteria. Some companies may require you to be ISO certified. So there's so much formalization that can, and the way the function is structured in the organization. So all these factors make the business purchase decisions very complex. And that's why my argument is that you can't just apply the B2C branding strategies on B2B. Any questions or comment on the complexity with the B2B purchase decisions? Yes, they are complex. I can see it on everybody's face. Okay. So I've got one example, real quick example from my own life. These are 797 trucks. These are the largest off-highway trucks in the world. Just to give you an idea, so each tire is about 12 feet tall. So if I stand right next to a tire, I would be only halfway through. So these are massive trucks. And at a side, there would be 100 of these trucks traveling. And you can imagine how much emission they create. And in the oil sands, which is near to where we, or the oil companies are under a lot of pressure to reduce emissions. So basically they asked us that, hey, you are the manufacturer of these trucks. Can you help us reduce our emission footprint? That was a pretty clear ask. We said, okay, yeah, we can look into that. We have got the smartest engineers on earth. So we got working at it. And I was the product manager at that time who developed this solution, and we brought it to market. I was really excited. I was like, hey, I don't really have to do any marketing or any promotion because this is something that the customers wanted, and I've got it. I was in for a surprise because I started to socialize this to the customers, realized it's not going to be a slam dunk. There are so many stakeholders. There are lawyers. There are emission. Most of the companies had their own emissions champions, their safety people, their reliability, their maintenance, their operations. All these people that had to be involved in this decision. And then, even if you were able to bring them all in, everybody had different set of expectations. Some wanted to see the emission reduction. Some were more concerned about reliability. Others, the finance person was more looking at what the dollar savings were. So very soon I got this lesson in B2B buying or selling that you really need to kind of understand that buying center and design your product and service and brand around that. So it took us a while to build that, but once we were able to get that in place, we sold, I think, about 50 of these repowered solutions and made about $100 million. So the dividends were pretty high, but it wasn't easy. So pretty interesting example of B2B purchasing. Okay, I put this picture in the slide deck because I thought that by the time we get to it, I mean, this is what's going to be the state of the class. Everybody would be bored and thinking about, hey, when it's going to be the break time so that we can have some food. Oh, that's not the case. The reason I put it up there was the sad thing is most of the B2B products and services are really boring. I hate to say that, but true. Think about, let's say, a piece of machinery, a pump that goes into a process plant. How cool is that? I mean, is it fun? I don't think so. I've got a pretty interesting example I'll just kind of share with you real quick. Lincoln Electric. Has anybody heard of this brand at all? I can bet you that all of you or most of you would have seen one of their products because this is by far the leading welding equipment or welding plant brand. And each and every construction site has it, or a plant. If you've been to a plant or a construction site or a project, you would have seen this over there. So world leading brand, great product, but in terms of a brand, it's pretty boring. I think the branding manager needs to be fired if you look at their website. I mean, this is directly from the website. But not only that, the point that I'm trying to make is that the B2B products are not as exciting or interesting. So that creates a bit of a, it can be handled, it can be worked, but you need to be very creative. Another challenge, what comes to mind when you look at this picture in B2B? And I think this is a common kind of a challenge, B2B versus B2C, but there are a few nuances that I'll speak to. Who has seen this movie? I've seen it 10 times because my kids loved it and I hate it. And earlier on, somebody also kind of mentioned this, standing out from the crowd, right? I mean, that's why you want to have a brand. And that's part of the challenge with the B2B and also with the B2C, because there are just too many brands out there, too many products, too many services. And that's the real challenge in the B2B space. I don't know whether you have done any research. If you go and just kind of look up a pump or a seal that goes into a pump, it's an industrial product, or some kind of a electric transistor, there are thousands and thousands of suppliers that are going to come up. Most of them are going to be Chinese, so you don't want to worry too much about their branding. But the reality is, this is a crowded marketplace, and that's a real big challenge for the B2B. Later on, I'm going to talk about a few strategies as to how we can stand out. But this is an example. This is a select list of players in the construction equipment phase. So select. This is not all by any means. Caterpillar is one of them. You can see them at the bottom center, CAT. Yikes, a lot of brands. It's tough to stand out. I know CAT is a very, very popular brand, but it's tough to kind of see it in this crowd. And these are not all of them. So that's a real big challenge. Another challenge in the B2B space. So I've got this example from Caterpillar, just kind of standing out. And this is what the CAT brand is. And you have got these two competitors, which are the closest competitors in the construction space. Again, Caterpillar has got a whole whack of competitors, but these are the two major ones in the construction machine space. Caterpillar, John Deere, and Komatsu. So John Deere is American, Cat is American, and Komatsu is Japanese. So again, there isn't no differentiation in the marketplace. The logos may look slightly different, but when you look at their products, they look pretty much the same. When you look at their positioning or brand positioning, all of that, it's very similar. And that's part of the challenge. I used to have these conversations with my marketing communication guy all the time. I said, hey, this is what I want you to promote in the advertise or brochure and all that. He said, hey, tell me something new. This is what your competition has on their website. True story. So that's the challenge. How do you differentiate yourself when your competition is pretty much the same? So one thing that Caterpillar has done recently is they relaunched their brands. Now they have a new brand logo, and as you can see, this does kind of put it a little bit different from the rest of the brands. So this is an attempt to stand out. The honeycomb structure that you see right next to Cat, and then you've got this red marking. This is for premium. They did a lot of research, and they said, hey, this is something that can, create those positive premium product association reminds the customers. So that's what we're going to go with. But having said that, there's a whole back-end things that need to happen in terms of expertise, product quality, technology, electrification, futuristic products that is in place to support this branding. But this branding image is a key part of trying to stand out and counter that challenge where everybody's becoming the same, trying to stand out. Example. B2B space, and again, it's very similar to the B2C world as well, but I find it more kind of, at least my kind of experience, that's pretty bad when it comes to B2B, is plethora of brands. These brands that you see are the Caterpillar brands. So these are the main brands. So I'm not even talking about sub-brands right now or brand extensions. These are the main big global brands that Caterpillar carries. So they're about 22, 23 if you count these. And this is a cleaned up version. They used to be about 35 or 40. So they were able to kind of reduce that list down. So that's part of the challenge, because if I'm a branding manager, or my sales team, they have got all these brands to sell. My customer base is looking at all these brands from one supplier. Think about other suppliers, other competitors. It adds up pretty quick, and very soon the customer's mind becomes numb. That's the real challenge. Okay, so what comes to mind when you look at this picture? Anybody?
Soldier.
Soldier. Terrorist. Somebody said terrorist. I like that term. So anybody want to take a crack at it as to why I put this picture right after the last slide? So I came across this term and really kind of resonated with me, called brand terrorist. And honestly, I have been one myself. And what this means is a person who just creates brands for the sake of brands. A person who just creates too many brands. And honestly, most of the brand managers or marketing managers fall into that trap. And I did that. I'll accept it. Because I've got a product, I'm looking at that product, I want to make sure that I create a brand, I stand it out in the market, and what I do is I create a whole brand around it. But what do I do? I damage overall, confuse the market, confuse the customer, confuse the sales force. So I might get some dividends in the short term, but in the long run, I'm creating more problems than benefits by creating those brands. So one of the key messages, don't be a brand terrorist, okay? So that's a key takeaway. All right, so we're gonna do a quick crossword. So you guys do crosswords?
No.
Anybody a big fan of?
No.
No? How did you get into IBA? Because that's how I kind of build up my vocabulary to pass the entrance test back in the day. Okay, so I've got these crosswords, and these are about some of the key concepts that we have studied so far. So I'll give you some hints and which cells to look at. The first one is across. So that's number 3 in the middle, consisting of many different connected parts like multiple stakeholders considerations in B2B purchases. So something which consists of many parts and pieces is difficult. What would that be? Complex. Spot on. Complex. Woohoo. And you said you did not do crossword. That's pretty good. Okay. Number 4. Opposite of fun and exciting,
Boring.
as are most B2B products and services. Yeah, that's true. Sad but true. So that's boring. Yeah, most of the B2B products are boring. So now let's look at the down. Number 1, having too many players as in B2B marketplace. Remember that Minions slide? Crowded. It's a really crowded marketplace, right? And both externally, when you compare your brand with the competition, and internally, when you look at all the different brands that you carry, so it can get really crowded. Okay, last one. Bonus. A person is a brand terrorist. Woohoo! Good job. Okay, so everybody want to have a quick stretch? Let's just stand up. We've been sitting for almost an hour now. We've got 30 minutes. So I'll just gonna stand and stretch. Let you guys stretch too for a minute. Don't go anywhere. Just stretch a little bit. Get that blood flowing. We're getting into the case studies. Last home stretch. Okay. So how's everybody feeling so far? Have you learned anything? Do you find stuff interesting? Or are you bored? Okay, that's good. Sorry? It is interesting. Okay, that's good. I'll take that as a compliment. So thank you very much. Okay, so we'll get into the case studies. And earlier on, I did mention I've got 2. So one that I was part of, and the other one that I've kind of seen evolve. So let's get on into the first one, and we'll kind of hit on some of the concepts that we kind of introduced in the earlier session, and you'll kind of see them in action in a real world case scenario. The Finning Exchange. So that was one of the products that I was responsible for. So what is Finning Exchange? So basically, Finning Exchange is exchange components. So when it's exchange components, so basically what happens is you see this truck. This is the same truck that I showed you in that picture where we had those trucks kind of running on a mine site. So what happens is after every say 15,000 hours or 18,000 hours, the components start wearing off, and that's when the customers have to either recondition those components or they have to buy new ones. Both buy new ones, a lot of money. If you recondition, then your truck is down for the duration of the recondition. So that's where the exchange component program kind of comes in, and Finning has a exchange program where we have got a manufacturing facility. We kind of remanufacture these components, put them on the shelves, and the customers can buy them and can return their own worn-out core. So that's how the program kind of works. Really good value for customers. Just to give you an idea, I've got one example. So this is a worn-out core, very dark, 3524 engine, again from the same truck. We receive it after the end of the life in that condition. We do the recondition at our remanufacturing facility. You see a technician kind of doing some work on it, putting it together, like new condition, and then basically it becomes a new component that goes back in, and the customer does not have to wait. They just kind of swap their, get a new one in, take the old one out, send it back to us. We rebuild it for the next customer. So that's how the program works. And then again, as far as the remanufacturing standards go, we invest a lot of, technology in it to make sure that we are doing the best possible job. So that's in a nutshell is that product. So this is our remanufacturing facility here in Canada. Fantastic facility. I'm just gonna show you. This is what it looks like from the inside. This is our assembly areas. 7-star, 5-star contamination control. Talk about Lean Six Sigma. you name it. I mean, we've got all the state-of-the-art manufacturing kind of capabilities in this facility. A little bit of a history lesson. So what happened was that Finning used to have a small remanufacturing business or a manufacturing center, and it was nowhere close to this type of facility. But then we looked at potentially growing that business, and we ended up purchasing 3 or 4 remanufacturing facilities, brought them all in, and formed this company called OEM Remanufacturing. So that's what came out of that. Again, we invested about $100 million. That became our flagship exchange brand. Now, it was a supplier to Finning. So basically, the customer products still had the Finning Cat logo. So just you can understand that how that worked. So OEM Remanufacturing manufactured those components, supplied them to Finning, and Finning sold them to the customer. But when the units came back, they went to OEM. And OEM had a pretty strong presence in the market because that's what we wanted. But that started to really confuse our customers because they're like, hey, is it OEM component? Is it Finning? And it was just not working out because, again, the customers, whenever they saw some issues, there was some finger pointing going on between Finning and OEM. And that was really damaging the overall brand. It was really confusing for the customer. And to add to the confusion, we had another very strong brand, Cat Reman. So Caterpillar, which is the mothership, also has a remanufactured or exchange program, and which is under the Cat Reman brand. Now, we did not use those components, but every now and then for peak shaving, we used to get those components and supply those to the customers. So the customer bought a Finning component. Sometimes they got it from OEM with the OEM logo. Sometimes they got it from Cat Reman. Sometimes it said Finning Cat. If they had issues, they called Finning. Finning said, it's not our component. Talk to OEM, talk to Cat Reman. It was a mess. You can imagine what happened, right? Now, what happens? Some competition starts coming in from US because our margins were pretty good. The customers were not satisfied. So we had these 3 big competitors from US came into our marketplace. Big Supply, HE Parts, which is very big in Australia. B&G Machine, again, kind of a global company. Those 3 people came in, and because our customers were really confused, we had some issues with our branding, with our product, they started to make a huge impact, and our market share started to slip. The profit margin started to come down, and that's where I got involved, and I was tasked to kind of come up with a solution to this. Again, there were a lot of elements to the solution, but I would just like to kind of highlight the branding and some of the key substantiators that we used to kind of position our brand into the market against these brands, and then it was very successful. So I'll just kind of show you some of those. So this is the brand that we came with, Finning Exchange, because we wanted to make sure that we have a very clear brand to our customers. So it's not Cat Reman, it's not OEM manufacturing, it's not OEM and Finning, it is Finning Exchange. Now at the same time, we did realize that our OEM was also a pretty strong brand, plus it was a separate organization. So there were some legal kind of challenges too to eliminate that brand altogether. So we decided to kind of maintain that brand, but just as a small sub-brand. So each component had a small sticker which said OEM Remanufacturing. OEM Remanufacturing facility had a logo which said OEM Remanufacturing. But I don't know whether you can notice, but right below OEM Remanufacturing, there is a tagline which says a Finning Enterprise. So that's completed the loop, because if somebody is getting confused as to what is OEM and why does OEM brand stand for, it is a separate sub-brand, but it's still a Finning Enterprise. So that really kind of made it clear. Now, what this did was, on one hand, really kind of clarified that branding strategy to our market, to our customers, that Finning Exchange is what you need to worry about. OEM is just a small piece of it. It's an important piece, but to you, it's Finning Exchange. That's what you need to work on. The other piece is, it also kind of sent a very clear message to our teams, because before that there was some infighting and finger pointing going on, but now it was pretty clear. Finning Exchange, OEM is separate. And there were a lot of functional aspects which traditionally were part of OEM from an administrative perspective. We took all those functions and put them under finning physically. We liquidated them there. For example, warranty. All the warranty was now handled by finning rather than OEM. There was some communication between OEM and finning, but the customer only dealt with finning. And we took care of it on the front, no matter what the solution would be with OEM. And that was one of the key things that really kind of set that stage for the market, the expectation, and the substantiator. For those of you who are wondering what happened to the cat reman, because remember there was this cat reman brand too? We just killed it. We said, hey, we don't want it. But in some cases, if we end up getting that product, we had a process established to take off all the cat reman logos and branding from that and put a finning exchange one on it. So that becomes a finning component. Does not confuse the customer. The warranty and everything is handled through finning exchange to make it seamless for the customer. So that's what we had to do to establish the market. So again, the key point is, how do you want to show up to the market with a unified, clean, simple message? And what are the key things that you need to do physically to make sure that you are able to live up to that? What are the processes that you need to streamline, and how do you need to establish your organization to be able to support that branding that you are trying to do? Because on the flip side, if you would have just changed the logo and kept the back-end processes the same, it would have been even worse consequence. Would you agree?
Yeah.
And then we had a lot of stuff. So again, our positioning to the customer was, the real benefit to the customer was control your operating costs. So that was kind of our brand mantra. Control your cost. I mean, that's where the finning exchange comes in. Makes it easy. Reduce your costs. Take control. You know what those costs are, and you can plan for it. Universal warranty. I mean, I kind of fought legal to get this approved, because warranty is one of the key ways in which you can put a stake in the ground and make a bold statement to the world. We did that. And then we still kind of highlighted our remanufacturing facility, OEM, but did not have those logos there to kind of avoid confusing the customers. Any questions on this before I get into the next brand? And we are kind of running out of time a little bit, so we may have to run through a few things real quick. Okay, a lot to absorb, I know. Okay, so I'll kind of get into this next example, really quick one, but I think it's really kind of interesting. What's the reaction when you look at these pictures? You've got some buckets and some welding and some fabrication and big hunk of iron and steel. Is it exciting at all? Does it look fun?
No. Maybe for the
Welcome to the world of B2B. That's the kind of stuff that I have to sell and promote. But again, I mean, that's where I'll kind of give you one example of company which was able to turn this upside down. So Raptor Mining is a company that I worked with. I know the owners and the CEO and the marketing people very well. So just think of it. Pretty much the same pictures, right? Same stuff from this to this. Pretty powerful, right? This stuff looks pretty neat. Interesting, right? Talks about technology, and so yeah, that's the power. If you can be creative and you can turn even boring into something really exciting. And to take this to one notch above is the play on Raptor brand. And they do a fantastic job with kind of using, so they've got these bunch of masks and gloves that they have ordered, and people can order it, and they have it in their trucks. Their chief marketing guy, I'm just going to show you. So their CMO, if you go to their website, this is his picture. I'm not kidding. It is on their website. I know this guy who's wearing it. I know him very well, but that's the picture he threw up there. That's the Raptor CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. Pretty smart. Pretty smart. And this is what they do, right? I mean, these are some of their kind of marketing materials. So with Raptor, laser scanning, so technology, quality control, putting stuff on, working hard. They have really kind of made it exciting, fun. for their employees and for the customers both. It's really exciting. You can see they're very active on LinkedIn. And again, yes, go ahead.
So these Raptor masks and hand gloves, since this is a B2B company, do the people take them seriously that they're working with such heavy equipment and like serious equipment and goofing around with
Yes,
that?
they do. And again, so again, I mean, that's where you need to be really smart as to how you do it. So they still do it in a safe way. So it's not something which is unsafe. But at the same time, I think there's a good, so they are able to kind of establish themselves as the experts in their space, but they're still having fun with it using their branding. So that's what they do. I'll give you a few examples as well. And go to their website, and you can even follow them on LinkedIn. And I've got a few things that I picked up on their website because I do follow them. So they also kind of do a really good job in leveraging the different events that come across, right? So they use that to kind of really gain some more traction and put their brand out there. So International Women's Day, this is what they had. This was their post. You see this lady in the front, she's wearing that mask, right? And doing a bit of a pose. Pretty interesting, right? Pretty neat stuff. This is another one on April's Fool Day. So they had this, the CMO of Raptor had this, and he was kind of filling in mayonnaise in the donuts, right? So that was kind of his April Fool's Day kind of a joke, and he kind of threw it on the LinkedIn. So it's pretty interesting, right? Gets your brand out there, shows that you are a fun company to work with, and you're enjoying what you're doing, and everybody else wants to work with you, right? And you know what? I also myself had an encounter with a dinosaur. I don't know whether you guys knew, but the place that I live was once inhabited by dinosaurs. One of some of the biggest kind of skeletons and all those fossils are here. And I also once had an encounter with a dinosaur. You guys don't believe me?
No.
I've got proof. But before that, I'll just kind of show you a few more examples. So this is the Raptor Fest, the Innovation Championship at their Jurassic facility. They call it the Jurassic. So we want to be the world's most innovative company. Pretty smart, right? I mean, just standing out. And here's my proof, eye to eye with a Raptor. Yes, that's me. It's their head office, it's their Jurassic facility. They call it the Jurassic facility. And they've got this neat mural on the wall, and they've got this raptor statue. And yeah, I got my picture taken. It was pretty neat. So yeah, branding can be fun too. Okay. So we've got a little bit over 10 minutes. So 5 minutes, I'll kind of give you for this business scenario. I'll kind of walk you through it real quick. And we may not be able to solve it today, but I might just kind of give you some of the thoughts that we have and what solutions we have done. So I'll just gonna let you read through this, and maybe we can just have this could be more of a.
Can I interject here?
Yes, please go ahead.
I know we're not going to have time to complete this. Can we
Go ahead, Jan.
put this into a graded assignment, please? So that yeah. And they will upload their answers to you on your email. Is that asking, being presumptuous of me?
I'm sure you're a busy person, you don't have time.
How about we do something fun and discuss?
I'll make time.
You make time. See,
Thank you.
that's what good teachers do.
So I'll just kind of walk you through real quick, and I did have how Finning approached it in there, but I don't think we'll have the time. Plus, now that's a graded assignment, I can't give you the answer, so I'll skip that piece. But it's going to go up. So you can read it, but again, this is a real scenario that we ran into. We have got these two brands, Cat Rental Store and the Finning, which is the main dealership. And this basically example is from our building construction segment. So this is smaller equipment that we sell to the building construction. So smaller building construction, so they use small equipment. And we have got bigger equipment that is sold in earth moving and mining and all those other segments. So this segment is very price sensitive, very competitive, fast paced, and customers are not brand loyal at all. And in order to kind of be successful in the rental space, we had created a separate company under the Cat Rental Store banner for the rental. And then we were selling the new equipment under the Finning Cat dealership along with the rest of the equipment. But what we were running into was on the rental side, we were not able to compete effectively. And on the new equipment side, our market share was pretty low. And then there was a lot of finger pointing between the two sales organizations. Again, similar to the Finny Exchange example, a lot of confusion with the customers as to which is the right brand. And are you really into the rental business or component or machine sale business? So yeah, so we had some challenges there. And I've got a few other details in there too, because we did some market research and we got some good customer feedback as to what they were looking for and what our core strengths were. So again, the question is, you have been asked to review the situation and come up with a branding solution. And some of the key areas are what's the overall branding strategy, hierarchy, brand mantra, essence, and the substantiators, physical evidence. And then I've got a few bonus items, like sketching a logo, how will you make it fun, and how will you promote the new strategy. So those are some of the key points that I have. So again, thanks, Jamie, for making it a graded assignment, so I don't have to make these people do it right now.
Yeah.
Any questions, comments?
No, the questions have to be directed that way, not this way. Go on, Basuma.
I was just wondering, in order to come up with a very creative and a better solution, something that adds value, can we do this assignment in groups?
Oh, the sensor. Sorry about that. The sensor went off, so the lights went out. I think it has to be an individual assignment. And again, it's not that difficult. And I can give you a few hints too. Maybe I'll just kind of walk you through some of the thoughts that we have and the way we are approaching it. It will kind of make it easier, but you can't copy this. So you have to be still creative. So I'll just give you a few things. So what we did was we kind of focused more on the equipment sales side, because that's kind of, we thought that's our core strength. So let's focus on that, less on the rentals. We created this brand, Ready to Go, which is kind of a sub-brand under Finning Cat. The Finning Cat becomes the main brand to the customer, so it's less confusing. And within that, we've got Ready to Go because the customer wants a quick solution, quick turnaround, easy to do business with, which Finning is not, because Finning is a big dealership. So we wanted to kind of give them that's kind of visual, right?
Yeah.
And this is what the stores are going to look like. Really kind of small stores, quick, approachable. Customers kind of come in, more like an auto, dealership type kind of a setup rather than traditional. So that's one of the things that we are trying out in Finning UK. And this is kind of our substantiator, or some of the 0% flexible finance, machine telemetry and tracking. So some solutions, full tank of fuel, again, a premium product. So you get that. That's an additional service. And then 2-year service maintenance package. So you get that as part of it. So those are the substantiators. So yeah, so those are some kind of examples to get the creative juices flowing. But again, as I said, you can cheat. And I would rather have a different solution than what I kind of showed you. And I would be grading it more favorably than something which is similar than what I showed you. So keep that in mind. Okay. So the key takeaways. What does this stand for? Best friends forever. So yeah, so I use the same acronym. I just added, so I'm just going to show you what that is. So B2C is not equal to B2B. That's the key takeaway. Because B2B is different in terms of complexity, the decision-making process, the type of products, the branding challenges, the whole organization that goes, with the brand at the back end. It's all different. So that's one of the key takeaways. So B2C is not equal to B2B. You can learn and apply B2C concepts, branding concept B2B, but not everything is applicable, and you need to really appreciate what the differences are between B2B and B2C. So that's the B. F is for foundation. So you need to have a solid foundation for your brand. So it just can't be a logo, it just can't be a set of visual or advertisements or just false promises. You have to have some meaning in there. So you have to be gonna the quality, ability, or whatever your promise is, you need to make sure that that is there and your organization is built to deliver on that promise. So you need to have that foundation. And then you have to make it fun. Gave you that Raptor example. I mean, those guys did an amazing job in converting something as boring as heavy welding and fabrication into something really fun and exciting. So that's one thing that another takeaway for branding is to make it fun, more so for B2B because the products by nature are pretty. Yes, go ahead.
So I have a question. So, for example, if there's a company which operates operates in the B2B segment as well as B2C segment. So they have two different divisions. One is B2C and other is B2B, right? So
Yeah.
can they have the same visuals and the same brand mantra, and they apply that to B2B as well as to B2C? But obviously they know that the mapping tactics have to be different because obviously they can't be same. The target audience is different. What do you feel
So
about
again,
that?
I think it's a really good question. No easy answers on that one. My initial thought would be, in an ideal world, their main brand should be common across the two business segments. They could have some differentiation between the two if they have to, again, depending on their respective markets. If they're too different, if you look at Apple, Apple is also big in B space, but does not really matter, and they are pretty successful with that. So that would be utopia for me if your product and service allows that, if your market allows that. If not, then maybe you have some common elements across both the businesses, B2B, B2C, and then you have got some differences um, within those to align with what your market really kind of demands. So BFF, B2B is not equal to B2C, have a foundation, have fun. And I had to add one more F. So anybody who wants to take a guess at what this F is? I'll make it easy. So you have to flaunt your brand. And that's another thing that I found, that a lot of B2B brands don't flaunt their brand. Again, going back to the Lincoln example, I mean, they're the world leaders when it comes to electrical welding equipment. They make some awesome products and their products do amazing things, but they don't flaunt it. So that's one of the things that Raptor does an amazing job. So I think that's another F that I'll add to BFF. So don't be a brand terrorist. Don't be a terrorist, period. But especially now that you have been through this class, don't be a brand terrorist. Instead, be a branded. And you can see the B2B on the side. So my preference is that most of you should go and join the B2B space and become the brandeds. And what I mean by branded is somebody who is, who is a big champion of brands, but he is smart and he or she is smart and selective about the branding strategies. Not a brand terrorist, but still a staunch supporter on branding. With this, I'll thank you, and I've got my contact information here. And this is more relevant now that you have to send me that graded assignment. So please make a note of this.
The
And you can
email
also add
should
me
fill
on
up
LinkedIn.
as we speak.
Thank you very much. And you guys have been an awesome audience, good questions and comments. So really appreciate your time. And yeah, thanks, Jami, for the opportunity once
Thank
again.
you.
It was
Thumbs
fantastic.
up. Brilliant session, and especially from the perspective of turning boring categories into something much more interesting and relevant to current trends. I guess that's the key to it. So once again, thank you very much. I'm just sending out an email to these people. You're copied on it, so, and I'll put in the deadline for them to submit it directly to you, and then you can just send me the grades back. It's out of 10.
Fantastic. And I'll kind of send out, once I've got everybody's email, I can send out a copy of my slide deck as well. And if you guys have any questions, let me know.
Sure.
Just remember, don't be a brand terrorist, be a branded. That's what you are. Take care.
Thank you very much. Are we off? Acha. हाँ जी.